Good evening and welcome to the Varietal Show. My name is Rory, and if you've never been here before, well, what we do tonight is a write-along stream, which means that we're going to take some sort of prompt structure, in this case a solo tabletop RPG, and we're going to try and write kind of like a first draft or first scene or an outline or, I don't know, whatever comes out of it, of some sort of writing, creative writing in about an hour. And it's a chance for you to see how first drafts kind of come together messy and clunky, and but also to not be scared of them, to just sort of get them done. And if you are not a writer of any particular sort, if that's not really your interest, but you just want to hang out, but you get ideas, feel free to join into the live chat here. Throw me your ideas. I try to integrate most of the ideas I get, as long as they're not shockingly off center or rude or whatever else. What we're doing tonight, I'll talk about in a minute. But one last thing. In the description of this video, if you are not watching it live, you can jump ahead to whatever part interests you. If you just want to hear the final product that we came up with, that's a button you can click down below. If you want to jump ahead to the writing and skip over the explanation of the game, that's a button down below. You can click whatever you want. And if you want to try the game yourself, it's on itch.io. And again, if you're not watching this live, a pinned comment with a link to the game, I think it's like $3, is available. And I do enjoy this game. It's not my all-time favorite, but I did enjoy it. I tried a little bit of it, and I'm hoping you guys will too. So that's what this is. If you came onto this channel for the folklore stuff, this is definitely on theme for that, but it is a fundamentally different exercise. I see that GS is in the live chat saying good evening. Well, almost. Technically said good evening. But my name, what I mean to say is good evening to you, GS. Okay. I actually kind of want to listen to the first song again. I'm going to explain our game now, which means it's time for Lit Games. So Lit Games stands for literature games, and it's basically expressive games, lyric games, solo tabletop RPGs, anything that's kind of focused on creative writing, using sort of prompts or structures or challenging sort of stuff, trying to incorporate what we get. And tonight's game is called Goblin Market. I'll show you what that looks like. Let me zoom out a bit here. There we go. Tonight's game is called Goblin Market by Elliot Silverian, and I got it off itch.io. It's a pretty straightforward premise. I wouldn't say it's a hugely replayable game. It's basically meant for individuals, in my case, or groups of people, to go through a few acts, is what they call them, of going to visit the Goblin Market, or basically the Fey world, which I'll get into if you're not a regular viewer of Fairy Tale Tuesdays, or Fireside Fairy Tales on Fairy Tale Tuesdays. Then I can give you a little insight as to sort of the general mythos around the world of the Fae that this seems to be building on. The way it works, though, is pretty straightforward, which is kind of a relief, because whenever these things are complicated, chat gets lost. I'm going to read a block of text that is pre-written by the creators of this game. And then I have a deck of cards here, half of which is split into the black, half of which is split into red. They've been shuffled, and then I'm going to pull a card. I think you actually can draw as many cards as you want. To help us resolve that, I have a D4 if we want to start looking at multiples. And we basically just try to use those questions and things that, because associated to each card is a list of info. I'll show you here an example. So like hearts, if we drew an ace of hearts, we'd say describe a place you would miss if you left. I'll get to why that's an important question in a moment, but you basically sort of embody a character visiting a goblin market where the worlds collide, of the seen and unseen. And then throughout, the theme is deciding whether you're going to go back to your world or stay in the Fey world. And so when we draw these cards, it's going to give us a little sentence that we try to address through creative writing. In my case, it's going to be sort of a story. Yeah, I think that's the simple explanation. It's a pretty straightforward game. Draw cards, use for prompts, and then write something. You in the chat, if you are watching along in the chat, can feel free to join in by sort of proposing your own character going to this and how they would react or anything like that. You can also write your own stuff on your own if you so desire. GS says, stunning, Arthur Rackham. That is obviously a reference to the illustration at the front here. And yeah, I can just make out, I'll zoom in for you. Down in the corner here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this on screen squarely. You can see it says down in the corner there, Arthur Rackham. 08, which I'm going to assume is 1908, and not 2008. Although I suppose, I actually don't know when Arthur Rackham lived. I believe it was turn of the century. Yeah, it's a beautiful drawing. You can already see, though, how goblins are kind of infamously got woven into anti-Semitic stereotypes. And you can even see some of that here. But we're not going to engage too much with that. Not because it's unimportant or anything, but there are other versions of goblins. So, that is tonight's story. And if you are here, I sure do appreciate it, because the summertime is definitely the time every year. Summertime, views drop off. It's basically been talking to myself. So I appreciate every like, every view, every comment during these, in more way than one dry season. Should I stay or should I go? A goblin market playthrough. I don't think we're going to get through all of it, but we'll see. Okay. I have my cards, I have my dice. Nothing for it but to talk about Act 1 and get our prompts. And so the structure of this, of course, is I'm going to read. GS says, Fae as in fairy. Yes. Fae, though, in general, is just sort of this idea of a kind of spirit realm that we see pieces of here and there but don't understand us. Like, Fae could be a lot of different types of spirits. In many ways, I think Fae was sort of became the catch-all for pagan religious concepts that were still hanging around in society during the Christianization. So, I mean, that's my best understanding of it. Now, I will say that I'm not going to do this game full justice. So if you are a creator of this game, I apologize. There are some things that work on stream and some things that don't. This game is designed for up to 4 people. I imagine you could do more if you wanted. And it has a character creation, which is mostly about finding out things, because it's a role-playing game about your own character to sort of figure out your motivations. But we're going to go at it differently and just start into the story. GS says, Fae is a collective term for pagan spirits. Someone's probably going to object to that definition, but I think that's a good sort of foothold on it. Yeah, like piskies and pixies, and I think even like leprechauns and so on, who aren't necessarily understood to be spirits, but I don't know what you would class them as. I don't know what use class really has in the nature of these kinds of creatures. Anyways. So Act 1, setting the stage. So I'm going to read a sort of preset block of text. Then we're going to draw cards, figure out prompts, and start writing. Dusk falls, bathing the world in purple, blue, and moonlight. As you step into the field through the thin veil between worlds, the goblin market flickers into view. Spheres of light dance overhead, illuminating the market. Music floats on the breeze from unseen instruments, mingling with the chatter of the crowd. The rich fragrance of spices, baked goods, and fruit greets you both from familiar comfort foods of your village and unknown delights from the Fey world. Mortal and Fey children run and laugh around the field as rainbows of fairy lights dance through their play. Excitement hangs in the air. It's goblin market time. Gia says, I googled, said the plural of fairy. I mean, they're not wrong. I just don't know how helpful that is. All right. Okay, let's draw cards from the red deck and follow prompts. Okay. I'm gonna roll my d4. Figure out how many cards we want to draw, and I got a 3. Not that anyone can even see that. 3 cards seems like a lot, so we'll reserve the right to sort of bail on them if we have to. Okay, so all of these are going to be hearts or diamonds because it's the red. We got a 6 of diamonds. We got an 8 of hearts, and we got a jack of diamonds. So let's get our prompts down from our list and work out from there and see if we can find ourselves a story. So the first one is a 6 of diamonds. What is one of your fondest memories of someone in this group? So this is going to be one of the unfortunate effects of playing this game the way that we are, is that it is sort of structured, even though it was sold as a solo tabletop RPG, and it can technically work. It is fundamentally clearly making the assumption that you're playing with a group of people, but that's okay. We can adjust these as we need. And one of the ways I think we could adjust that one is, what are some fond memories of either we could have 2 characters in our story. That does make it harder to sort of wrap up quickly, but maybe we don't care about that. But the other thing you can do is, like, what are some fond memories of your life at home in general? Because the core of Goblin Market, as I look up the next thing, is you're going to go to a Goblin Market, but the Fey world always wants you to stay. The catch there is always that if you stay forever. And in this one, it's picking up on a tradition where if you eat Fey foods, you cannot leave. Now, that's not always the case, but that is a common trend. Okay, our second one then is, do mostly local people go to this goblin market, or did people come from far and wide to attend? Have you heard of goblin markets in other places, or is there something special about this one place? So these are questions for you guys to consider out in the chat. And the last one is a jack of diamonds. How long have you lived in the village? All right. So again, these are sort of questions to answer, and from it, we will derive some information. Now, I'm going to kind of disagree with a concept that the game implies here. Disagree is the wrong term. I'm just going to go a different direction, I guess, because it's just a creative choice. I kind of think the goblin market should be a private affair that humans sometimes stumble across, but isn't a commonly attended thing. And I think I'm going to make it so that the people that are there sought out after it. Sort of on rumors and tales without knowing if it really existed. GS says, come far and wide. I like that idea because then we can have our character can be someone who has traveled quite far, became infatuated with the idea. Now, the easy and obvious move is to say they've come for secret medicine because they're ill or someone they care about is ill. But if somebody has another motivation of just curiosity or something, yeah, you can propose it. Okay, so let's do some writing. It wasn't a swift trip by any measure. Most had never seen the Goblin Market. And met my requests for directions with nary more than a raised eyebrow for what they clearly perceived to be the madman wandering before them. It's a bit of an elaborate sentence. I had come I can think of a more interesting way to say that. This was the classic reference here to Lord of the Rings. This was the first time. Fist time? Speaking of old world languages and so on, because I'm drawing a little bit from that here, I had an interesting experience this week. As I've mentioned before, I do sometimes listen to the Corries, which are a Scottish folk band. And there are generally live recordings, like a lot of these things. This was the first time I had traveled out so far into the Marsh County and well off away from home. My neighbors thought I had snapped. Is this just telling me to be American? Yeah, fuck off. Neighbors thought I'd snapped. My neighbors thought I'd snapped. Anyways, yeah, I was listening to the Corries, and I've listened to this. The one I listen to the most is the best of the Corries. I think that's kind of where folk bands do best. Their top songs. And there's this live recording of Wild Rover, which is a pretty classic song about being a drunk who apparently is reformed, but then just keeps going and getting drunk. But in the song, he does the classic folk song thing of like getting people to sing along. And there's this exchange in it. I'll write my story, don't worry. But like I said, these are the dead weeks where very few people are reading. Anyways, in the song, at one point he's sort of trying to get the woman in the audience to sing along, and they don't really respond at first, at least not as well as he wanted to. So he kind of chides them for it, and then they yell really loudly. So he's like, I can't hear you, basically. But they yell so loudly, he says, got some Glasgow Keelies here tonight. For the life of me, for years, I've listened to this thing, and I have no idea what that meant. And when you search, depending on how you conjugate the E on the end of Keeley, you get two very different answers. And then there was the idea that it might have been a Gaelic word, in which case I was way off on the spelling, and so on. And so I was in a chat that has a UK crowd. And I said, is there anybody born in Scotland or near Scotland who can tell me what the hell this means? And it has turned into like a multi-day thing. Most Scottish people had never heard the term. The ones who had at first were like, well, we know it's sort of brutish. It's sort of like being a ruffian. And then we sort of found that definition. And then somebody dug a little deeper and found an etymology that it was related to Glasgow having a riot about cricket. And I think their team was called the Keeleys, or their fans were called the Keeleys. To be honest, I never really found a clear conclusion other than it seems to be saying they seem a little rowdy. Anyways, I found that interesting. My neighbors thought I'd snapped from the long and hopeless care I'd been giving my loved one. Through their unending illness. So, by the way, if you're from Scotland and you're of that time and you're like, Glasgow Keeleys, I know what that means. Go right ahead. Let me know. I don't know what it means. Other than it seems to be about being a bit of a ruffian. My neighbors thought I had snapped from the long and hopeless care I'd been giving my loved one through their unending illness. I saw it differently. The priests, holy, let's try a different tone. Let's go with the beach stream list. The priest's holy water had rolled off her skin with not a touch of healing to be found. The medicine folk, keeping the old ways, had burned and crushed all sorts of shrubbery, to no avail but foul bitter teas that turned her ever greener and not a sliver better. It was a hopeless decline my lady was in, and should have I waited for the works of learned men, going some real old world, or not old world, like real like Victorian era reborn supernatural here. Have I waited for the works of learned men to catch up to her illness? Nay. I would rather say I had exhausted my every choice. That left me with what they called what they regarded as tall tales and bardic lies. The stories of potions and herbs unknown to this world. That stories of potions and herbs unknown to this world laid out in a rare and private market. GS says, Google defines a Glasgow Keeley as a male city dweller of the rougher sort, an uncouth, rowdy fellow, and a tough. That's true. However, if you keep searching around, you will find that there are variations on that because it's slang. And it digs all the way back to... Anyways, it particularly doesn't help that that definition doesn't have a clear quality, a clear context in the song, because he's explicitly addressing women, for one. And for two, the thing he was mainly talking about was that they didn't make enough noise and they weren't rowdy. The stories of potions and herbs unknown to this world laid out in a rare market, hidden among the bushes, when the waning moon stretched thin the curtain between our worlds. I sought for medicine for my lover, dear. In the meadows and marshes where, well, this is going to rhyme, and I'm just going to go with it, fey things appear. Okay, we have our introduction, we have our motivation, we got a rough idea of the character. What is one of your fondest memories of someone in this group? I guess we should start with his lover's memories. A memory of his lover. It was the 5th week of travel along a sparse breadcrumb trail of rumors and half-seen glows and glades. When I finally got a credible direction to the goblin market, it was in a valley whose soil was stitched with rose. I need a wildflower, especially one that grows sort of in marshy areas. I'm gonna take a drink of water, but chat, you can certainly help me with that. You guys seem to know flowers better than I. Okay, I'm back. I was in a valley whose soil was stitched with rows of... Preferably would have a flower here, but if chat doesn't know, nobody wants to watch a man Google for a stream. I don't know, let me know. If Rory Googles things is in your interest, I can certainly arrange it. Be easier than writing a full story every hour. It was in a valley whose soil was stitched with rows of wildflowers of the same type we had fallen asleep in together. It was in our... I remember I had gone there to ask them to stay with me for so long as time and fate allowed, carrying a fine, bejeweled marker of my affections. But we were wine drunk and silly, so just fell into the cotton fluff, stuck about the tall grass. Lilies is a good one. Why didn't I think of lilies? GS is a marsh marigold. I didn't know marigolds grew in marsh. Like orange marigolds grow in a marshy condition? The problem is I think lilies are a little too marshy. Like, you're not going to fall down in lilies. You'd be drowning. I'll just leave it as wildflowers for now. I don't know enough about marsh marigolds. Fell into the cotton fluff, stuck about the tall... It was a glorious sleep. Not more... This is just turning into a romance novel. Which, whatever. The goblin market will happen eventually. GS says they're yellow. Yellow marigolds. Am I high or do marigolds usually come in orange? Buttercup family. Well, I do really like buttercups, I will say. It was a glorious sleep. Not more than 20 meters from a carriageway, yet as private as a king's quarters on that silent spring eve. Eve is a good word. I'm not thinking about it too much. That. This is the memory. Like, I am playing the game here. They're marsh versions, not regular. I mean, I have to look it up now, don't I? I'm just curious now. Marsh marigolds. Oh man, they do look different. They really do just look like buttercups. Interesting. Here, for anybody wondering. Those are very pretty flowers. Thank you for the recommendation. It's a glorious sleep, not more than 20 meters from a carriageway, yet as private as a king's quarter on that silent spring eve. Eventually, drowsy and dry-mouthed, We wandered back to the stables, along the edges of a shallow duck pond. Peppered. Edges, there's another word for that, you know. For those, here's your writing tip number 1, guys. Edges of a waterway are known as shores. The only writer in the world to call that a shore. We should call it the edge. This probably isn't as funny to anybody else, but clearly the wrong word. GS says, are we going to the Fae to get a potion or medicine? We are, but one of our assignments was to reflect on a memory. So we're starting with that. Anyways, we're starting with that, but that is the goal. I question whether I'm actually going to get to that, but that's... I mean, the overall goal of this is just to write something, really. We wandered back to the stables along the shores of a shallow duck pond, peppered with butter, yellow, marsh marigolds. Staring at them. Water's Edge. Water's Edge sounds better. That wasn't what I said, though. GS says, not sure if a pond has a shore. I don't know. Feels like the better word. Staring. It was one of many remarkable and uplifting memories that had kept me moving over glen and dale, through rain. Oh no, I'm gonna rhyme again. I mean, I can't resist. If I see the rhyme, I'll take it. It's really bad form, by the way. In the middle of a story, in the middle of a piece of prose, like they tell you not to rhyme, you're supposed to remove it. And I never do. And, you know, that's probably why I'm an indie author. One of many reasons. Oh, you were just asking for the sake of those who've joined us after your initial explanation. Has someone joined us? I don't have the view counts up. If you've joined us, thank you. I hope you're at least getting something out of it. Uplifting memories that have kept me moving over glen and dale through rain and gale. And the low valleys that my mood would wear. Let's go full drama into my soul. Still, I was abundantly shocked to finally see the strange, unearthly lights flicker as sea fire off the ripples of that murky swamp. Murky dark swamp? Dark murky swamp? The moon was low and the sun was gone, so it could be nothing else. But the illuminations of the Fae. I trudged quickly through the mud, struggling for each sucking step out of its sinking silt. I don't know if that sentence makes sense, honestly. As I grew nearer, I heard strange light voices on the wind, beckoning in tongues I had never heard, for me to come ever closer. And so I did. Oh. GS says, what color were the lights? Green? Orange? What color do you relate to Fae magical lights? I'd sort of just seen them as kind of an ambery light, but you make a good point. Because, you know, I think it remains in the realm of possibility to say that sort of will-o-wisps are lighting it up. We could also do, this is an old writing trick when you're indecisive. Strange, let's say airy voices, because I used light in two different ways there. Strange, unearthly lights. Flicker, SC, or Pyro. Flicker in jewel tones. Sea fire is a real thing. You really mostly see it in the north, but sea fire is kind of green. I think it's an algae that does it. Somebody else can look it up. I'm not a biologist. It's fascinating, but I have no memory for these sorts of things. I read them and they fall out the other side. I remember characters I wrote in high school, which is more years ago than I care to admit, but I can not remember literally anything else about my life. The rest is just a blur. I think I had a family. Maybe there was a sibling. No, I can't. I never remember a family. Unearthly jewel tone lights is another way I could put it. I might just leave it as is. Or I could work it into a later paragraph. The lights, I came into the clearing, classic line. I came into the clearing and the lights came into the clearing, into a clearing. If you want to know what the heart of writing is, this is it. Like, for the most part, I try to skip over this sort of tedium to keep it going and get the story done. And you know, as much as a guy writing can be entertaining, try to keep it entertaining. But if you want to know what writing really is, it's sitting here and going, coming into the clearing, a clearing. Coming into a clear, well, coming into scythed, into a plateau of scythed grass. Like, it's that. Or, actually, honestly, it's spending an entire day researching names and then hating all of them the next day. There's writing in a nutshell. I came into a clearing. I actually like that line, no. I came into a plateau. No, plateau, not too confusing. Came into a clearing of freshly scythed grass that was populated by wide-eyed, by bug-eyed, by fish-eyed. No. By creatures big and small. Let's start more general. There were those of gray and green leather for skin that stood no taller than my knee. And had the eyes of a curious grouper. Is that how you say grouper? Grouper? The fish, anyways. Had the eyes of a curious grouper. Stood no taller than my knee and had the eyes of a curious grouper. Those of gray and green leather for those who had gray and green leather for skin that stood who stood they stared at me with the eyes of a curious grouper. There were those gangly types with skin of tree bark and hair of willow's strands, pricked with pale pink blossoms. Most surprising, however, under the swirling lights. Most surprising to find, however, I was most surprised. However, I was most surprised to find fellow humans under the swirling lights of dancing will-o-wisps. I had wanted immediately to join in their reverie, but I sought with the focus only a breaking heart can grant, for potions and miracles from the Fae beyond. It was not long for me to find a strange little creature tugging at the cuff of my pants. It is a little strange, I guess, to say pants here, because I've sort of adopted this pseudo British dialect for a lot of this, or at least it's taken from that style. And they don't call them pants. They do call something pants. They call the pants what we call underpants. They call them trousers. Which, I don't know. I like that word more, to be honest. It was not long for me to find a strange little creature tugging at the cuff of my pants. It winked its jelly eye at me. And itched its little nose in a knowing way. And a voice that came from my own head more than its lips. It said, "You come for cures. So you come over here." It pointed for me to follow. I'm not sure how it knew. But I find questioning the spirits of the world usually does little to help one's cause. I followed it and hunched down to its counter. It asked for the symptoms, and I told them of my lover's lesions and unending cough. It plucked from its shelf. What color should the potion be? That's a good question. Gonna have a drink of water. I am open to recommendations on the color of the potion. Maybe vermilion? A vermilion potion. Jess is green. Let's go with green. But I'm gonna say emerald. An emerald potion that swirled endlessly and looked more like a cloud of fireflies than anything else I've ever witnessed. Then I asked the price. The little critter gave a thoughtful nod, and placed before me a fine pastry that smelled of juniper and sweet berries. The little emissary of the Fae said, "I just want an opinion on my wee baked good." I guess we're Irish now. Not Irish, rather Scottish. I just want an opinion on my wee baked good from the tongue of a mortal man. Actually, I don't think I ever established a gender, so why would I know of the mortal folk? I pondered this offer, for I am no fool, and I know the wise men's tales. Yet, I know the Fae cannot lie, not as such. So the potion would work. I knew my lover had no time, so I spoke straight to the little goblin folk. You ask for my opinion, but you mean to shackle my soul. For I know to eat of the Fae is to lose the world I come from. The little creature grimaced and began to mumble. It did not lie, but it tried to reassure it was mostly interested in my opinion. Otherwise, no deal could be made. And so, the arrangement, after exchange, after my offers of gold and strange ornaments from my finer dress in the suitcase, concluded as such. The potion would be delivered direct to the mouth of my ill lover, and in their hand they would leave this letter. There we go. I found an ending. Which means I should probably go back and read it. Okay. I like this song. This is a good song. I mean, I picked it, so obviously I liked it before, but I haven't really listened to it in a while. All right. Oh. See that for some reason Vin Diesel was staring at me, and I think that's because my background expired. There we go. All right. If you're coming to this part of the stream, it's because you just want to know what the story was and what we came up with. I called this one Should I Stay or Should I Go? A Goblin Market playthrough, and the story that we're writing was based around some prompts, although I kind of got off them, to be honest, of going to a Goblin Market, which is a game that you can get on itch.io. You can check the pinned comment below. The prompt that we got, which was based on pulling some cards, was what is one of your fondest memories of someone in this group of players. We sort of recast that because we're playing the solo as someone in the main character's life. There was a question here about do mostly local people go to this Goblin Market and so on. What we decided was the Goblin Market was a mostly secretive thing that people would travel from far and wide to pursue on sort of vague information. And how long have you lived in the village? We didn't really address that one. But we did come up, we're supposed to do this in 3 acts or so on, but that's a 2-hour version of the game. So basically what we did was we came up with a short story here about somebody seeking medicine for an ill lover. It wasn't a swift trip by any measure. Most had never seen the Goblin Market and met my requests for directions with nary more than a raised eyebrow for what they clearly perceived to be the wandering madman before them. Do I have anything that's a little more appropriate? Let's try this. This was the first time I had traveled out so far into the marsh counties and well off away from my home. My neighbors had thought I'd snapped from the long and hopeless care I'd been giving my loved one through their seemingly unending illness. I saw it differently, though. I had tried the priest's holy water, and it had rolled off their skin. We went with not a touch of healing to be found. The medicine folk, keeping the old ways, had burned and crushed all sorts of shrubbery to no avail, save for foul bitter teas that turned them ever greener, and not a sliver better. It was a hopeless decline my lover was in, and should have I waited for the works of learned men to catch up to her illness? Nay, I would rather say I had exhausted my every choice. That left me with what they regarded as tall tales and bardic lies. The stories of potions and herbs unknown to this world, laid out in a rare market hidden among the bushes when the waning moon stretched thin the curtain between our worlds. I sought for medicine for my lover dear in the meadows and marshes where fey things appear. It was the 5th week of my travel along a sparse breadcrumb trail of rumors and half-seen glows and glades when I finally got a credible direction to the Goblin Market. It was in a valley whose soil was stitched with rows of wildflowers of the same type we'd fallen asleep together, my lover and I. I remember I'd gone there to ask them to stay with me for so long as time and fate allowed, carrying a fine bejeweled marker of my affections, but we were wine-drunk and silly, and so just fell into the cotton fluff stuck about the tall grass. It was a glorious sleep, not more than 20 meters from a carriageway, yet as private as a king's quarter on that silent spring eve. Eventually, drowsy and dry-mouthed, we wandered back to the stables along the shores of a shallow duck pond peppered with butter-yellow marsh marigolds. It was one of many remarkable and uplifting memories that had kept me moving over glen and dale, through rain and gale, and the low valleys that my mood would wear into my soul. Still, I was abundantly shocked to finally see the strange, unearthly lights flicker as sea fire off the ripples of that dark, murky swamp on that fateful night. The moon was low and the sun was gone, so it could be nothing else but the illuminations of the Fae. I trudged quickly through the mud, struggling for each sucking step out of its sinking silt. As I grew nearer, I heard strange, airy voices on the wind beckoning in tongues I'd never heard for me to come ever closer, and so I did. I came into a clearing of freshly scythed grass that was populated by creatures big and small. There were those that had gray and green leather for skin who stood no taller than my knee. They stared at me with eyes of a curious groper. There were those gangly types with skin of a tree bark and hair of willow strands pricked with pale pink blossoms. However, I was most surprised to find fellow humans under the swirling lights of dancing will-o-wisps. I had wanted immediately to join in their reverie, but I sought with the focus only a breaking heart can grant for the potions and miracles from the Fae beyond that would cure my lover. It was not long for me to find a strange little creature tugging at the cuff of my pants. It winked its jelly-like eye. Its jellied eye at me and itched its little nose in a knowing way. In a voice that came from my own head more than its lips, it said, "You come for the cures, so you come over here." And it pointed for me to follow. I'm not sure how it knew, but I find questioning the spirits of the Fae world does little to help one's cause. So I followed it and hunched down to its counter off in the corner of the goblin market. It asked for the symptoms of my lover's illness, and I told them of their lesions and unending cough. So it plucked from its shelf an emerald potion that swirled endlessly and looked more of a cloud of fireflies than anything else I've ever witnessed. Then I asked the price. Now the little critter gave a thoughtful nod and placed before me a fine pastry that smelled of juniper and sweet berries. The little emissary of the Fae said, "I just want an opinion on my wee baked good from the tongue of the mortal folk." Now I pondered this offer, but I am no fool, and I know the wise men's tales. I know the Fae cannot lie, not as such, so the potion would work. However, and I knew my lover had no time. So I spoke straight with the little goblin folk. "You ask for my opinion, but you mean to shackle my soul, for I know to eat of the Fae world is to lose the world I come from." The little creature grimaced and began to mumble. It did not lie, but it tried to reassure me it was mostly interested in my opinion. Mostly. Otherwise, no deal could be made. And so the arrangement, after my offers of gold and strange ornaments from finer dress in the suitcase were declined, concluded as such. The potion would be delivered direct to the mouth of my ill lover, seeing them cured. And in their hand, the little goblin would leave this letter. And that was what we got from Goblin Market. I feel like I didn't do all the greatest justice of the game. I will tell you actually now what the structure of the game is. You're supposed to sit around a table of people and everyone draws a card and they get a question and then they tell you about their character in this act using the prompt. But what I did instead was just sort of made it about a single person, because I always like stories of like individuals wandering through the bushes and finding glowing little things and having to make decisions on their own and so on. So I sort of altered the play a bit, but I think it's fun. I think for the price, if you have people that are sort of interested in descriptive play and they want to sit around a table and imagine they're in another place, I think you should give it a shot. You know, indie games, they need love. Anyways, GS says beautiful descriptive writing. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you to everybody who dropped by the stream to say hello, even if it was just a moment. Please, if you like the stream, give it a like, because these are the dry seasons for YouTube views, and anything you can do is really appreciated. If you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing. If you've made it this far, I think you will enjoy the content. I think most people probably will be like, why is nothing happening visually or whatever else? But if you are one of the special few who make it this far and enjoy the sort of chill vibes of it and just sort of living in your own imagination a bit, then I think you're my people and I'm yours. So consider subscribing. Beyond that, I enjoyed myself, and that's really the only thing that counts for all of this weird little hobby I keep. Thank you so much, GS, for your recommendations and for keeping me on the straight and true about some matters. I'll be back on Tuesday with some fairy tales, and I'll be back next Thursday with some more writing. Thank you very much, GS. You don't have to stay here. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Get out of my market.